What's the first thing that comes to your mind when somebody says post-apocalyptic scenario? What, Walking Dead, zombies, Bruce Willis flying into space to blow up an asteroid? Well, have you ever thought about the rubber tree? Nah, me neither. But that's a few things that we're going to talk about in this episode. But before we get into all of that, I got a couple things I'm going to throw at you. First, Live Rishi. These guys make high-quality CBD product. Using some of it right now as we speak. It's the Rishi Rub. I put it on my ankle. Got a little soreness there. Works like magic. Check these guys out. LiveRishi.com. Use a code word TABLE. Let them know I sent you, and you're looking at 50% off. Also, they have some tinctures and other great items. Check them out. LiveRishi.com. Use code word TABLE. Also, my website and merch store wide open. Would love for you to check that out. Love the merch that I got in there. And I also started the buy me a cup of coffee thing. Got some cool things coming down the pipeline on that. Jump over waltzkitchentable.com. Browse around, click around. Got any questions? I'm always up for a good conversation. You can contact me through the website. Now, on to the episode. Welcome to Walt's Kitchen Table, where I feature captivating stories from fascinating people. Alex, one fascinating dude. Truly enjoy talking to this guy. He's a self-proclaimed downer, but I think the complete opposite. He is an expert on post-apocalyptic scenarios, and we get into some crazy stuff, some things that I would never have thought of, and I've had an interest in this stuff for a long time. One of them, how about AI? You know, it's not going to be the Terminator type thing. We're going to get into that. And his scenario around bacteria, it's just better to let him explain that one to you. So let's get to it. Oh, hi, dude. So everything you say now is going to be on the internet. So don't be talking too much shit.
All right.
Talk all the shit you want, dude.
Have you seen my website?
Yeah, I was just going to say, dude. So first of all, I appreciate you reaching out because this has like always been one of my top 3 topics I've been fascinated with, fiction and nonfiction. You know? And to talk to somebody that, with your extensive knowledge in that, you could probably debunk a lot of the garbage too, right?
Yeah, and it's weird because I have this strong science background, so I can actually go and look like at what the actual experts are saying, and sometimes it's like this is a really interesting thing. So like the astronomy apocalypses are all very straightforward. It's like, oh shit, the sun explodes and the earth dies. Like it's pretty straightforward.
That might be in like 5 billion years though, right?
Yeah. So in the course of researching for that article, so it's like we have somewhere between like 3 and 6 billion years before that happens. So the sun right now is a yellow star, and it'll become a red giant, which is bigger, and that will basically either engulf the Earth or pull out far enough that its orbit gets messed up and we get flung basically into outer space.
Mm-hmm.
But while I was researching that, in a billion years, so like a third to a sixth less than that, the sun will get so bright and so hot that it will actually desiccate the whole planet. So there will be no water, no oceans, no lakes, no nothing left on the planet.
It'll just become a solid piece of rock.
Yep.
Now, how far would you predict that goes out, like to Jupiter or Saturn? Like when it gets to that point, what planets will be decimated, do you think?
So basically, it'll go just a little bit. There's some variation, but just a little bit beyond the Earth's orbit. But it will actually move the Goldilocks Zone. Have you heard this Goldilocks Zone for planets?
No, that sounds interesting. Goldilocks Zone.
So the Goldilocks zone, when people are looking for life in other solar systems, is where there can be liquid water. So it's not too cold and not too hot. If it's too cold, it's ice. If it's too hot, everything is evaporated. So you're looking for that just right part of the solar system. And so for when you're going beyond when the sun becomes a red giant, or when it does become that, basically things that we think of as out and cold right now, so like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, that area of the solar system will become the new Goldilocks zone. So the current long-term plan is to figure out how to terraform those planetoids or planets. Don't really want to get into the Pluto planet thing at the moment, but
Right. So with that being a billion years away, I think we got a couple days to figure that out though.
yeah, we've got some time.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So no, but that stuff just fascinates me because the universe itself in space, it just blows my fucking, you can't even, how big, right? I mean, there's just, it goes on forever, right? There's no end. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's sort of mind-bending when you try and think about infinities. And I don't know, I've got a PhD at this point, and I still don't get it. So
Yeah. There's now the thing too is I heard, and this is one of the questions I was really interested. I hope you can help me with that. Looking for other life forms, whatever that may be, right? Higher life, bugs, whatever, right? Speaking of higher life, we're sending signals out into space. Now, I read somewhere that would be impossible for any other planet, solar system, whatever, to pick up that signal because it's not strong enough to get by the noise of the sun.
I mean, I could totally see that. And then that if there's like interference from the sun, because it's just so much energy, like it's mind-boggling just how much energy the sun puts out. I've never heard that would just cancel out any signal, but it certainly sounds plausible.
Yeah, see, that's what I would think too. Like you said, so much energy and so much shit's coming out of the sun. What we're putting out is so weak in comparison, it just plows it right over. Now, that being said, that's why we don't hear anything from any other place because they're trying to do the same thing, say, but their sun is blocking out their signal.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you can go down a whole rabbit trail of what's called the Great Silence. Have you heard that term?
No.
So it's this like thought experiment in astrobiology, and the idea is, why haven't we heard or seen any other civilizations? And so there's like a bunch of different things. The one that I think is least likely is that we're the only life that's evolved intelligence in the universe.
We're not even that intelligent, dude.
Yeah. Well, that's the other end, is that there's like a whole like Star Trek style federation, but until we get our shit together, they're going to hide from us.
Well, that, and we just want to kill everything that comes about, right? So
Yeah.
if a spaceship lands, what's the first thing we're going to do? Try to blow it up.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them for not showing up, dude.
Yeah. And then you have things in between there. It might not be possible to move across interstellar space. So right now we have a hard limit of the speed of light is the fastest we know that anything can move. And so if you wanted to get to something that's we can't even get to a fraction of the speed of light right now. So if you were trying to get to the closest star, it would take like 100,000 years to get there with our current technology, which I haven't had a car that lasted more than like 10, 20 years. So
yeah, let alone So, did you watch The Universe on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
It's an amazing documentary, dude. Oh, not documentary. It's like a 10-part series, and they break down. And they were talking about a red star and a white star and a yellow star, and they break all that down. So that's really, you might find that interesting.
Oh,
I think it's
awesome.
just called The Universe on Netflix. And this lady was trying to describe the size of the universe, and going like what made me think of it, what you just said. She goes, "We know of one planet that might be able to sustain life." She goes, "But think of it this way: there's a basketball in New York City. That's our sun, and there's a little pea flying around it. That's us. Then the planet that we know of that might have life is in San Diego, and that's a basketball, and the little planet we think has life on it is a pea. Now, how the fuck do you think we're going to travel all that distance with the current technology that we have?" So when you put it that way, you're like, nah, ain't going to happen.
Yeah. And the one thing that's been suggested is generation ships, which is basically you send people and they have kids, and then their kids have kids, and then the whatever generation is there when you reach it. And then there's actually been some recent like work that's shown that we actually don't have the technology to sustain a generation ship right now. Like the biodome experiments and things have all failed in long-term, completely closed system.
Yeah, like having LG on the ship to create oxygen and everything else. That's just not sustainable at this point.
Yeah, and there's biodome experiments that were done in the U.S. and they just keep failing for reasons that you wouldn't even think about. So, like one of these are these encapsulated domes where they're trying to be entirely self-sufficient within the dome, and it's supposed to be like, before we have a space colony in space, hey, let's get it right on Earth first, and then try it where people's lives aren't actually on the line. But at one point, they had trees just starting to fall over inside of the dome. And the reason is that normal trees actually, when they move in the wind, there's like small fractures that then recover and strengthen over time. And if you don't have that movement of the wind, the trees never gain that tensile strength. So whenever they get pushed or experience a disruption, they just are super brittle and fall over.
No shit. Kind of like working out, dude, where you break your muscle down, make it stronger.
Yep, the exact same idea. Just for plants.
Now if we never put a tree in a place where there was no wind, we would have never thought that. And then we get on Mars and all of a sudden the trees start falling over.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Well,
and there's like thousands of things like that just we never consider because we've never been out somewhere or in a completely resourceless world.
Right. Well, the thing is too, I mean, how old is the Earth, in your opinion?
It's about 4 billion years old. Something like that in geological record. I'm sure somebody on the internet will correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, that's always fun. So it's taken 4 billion years to figure all that shit out, and we're trying to do it in a lifetime. Or a couple lifetimes, maybe, Yeah, that's not going to happen. But hey, they're out there trying, and I think that's cool. And even that little thing you learn, and you go to the next thing, and you go to the next thing, and maybe multi-generational from now, we'll be able to do that because what people are doing now.
Yeah. And that's the hope, right?
Yeah. Would you go to Mars if you knew you weren't coming back, or like a generational ship? Would you do that?
Not right now. Definitely not.
Why is that? Because you don't trust it?
Yeah, I think that if like if we sent out a Mars colony tomorrow, I think they'd probably be dead within a year.
And how long does it? Well, you mean a year once they got there?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like depending on how you do it, it can take a while to get there in the first place. But after that, like just reading up on our efforts to come up with space colonies, I'm like, that seems
Is that not going to happen? But they in that show, The Universe, they show how the Mars and Earth orbit, and then what part of the orbit is the shortest trip from Earth. So then once you land on Mars, you gotta to wait for it to cycle back around. It's like 6 months or something, if I remember correctly.
okay. Yeah, I believe it. It's basically like yeah, shooting a bullet at a very tiny rock that's across the state. So like, I imagine there's lots of difficulties there.
Yeah. So what got you into all this stuff, man? We got to tell people listening, like what they're probably at this point going, what the fuck are they talking about?
Okay. I guess the near term thing is that I host and run a blog called Another Apocalypse, which is about different ways that there could be modern apocalypses. And then my background is actually I have a PhD in biomedical sciences from Mayo Clinic. And then I worked as a professional science communicator. And so my PhD was based on viruses, and if you haven't noticed, the last year has been pretty much
Right
a
up your
shit
alley.
show for
Yeah.
that. So I like talking about hope and all the promise that science can deliver, but last year kind of broke me, and I was like, all right, fine, I'm going to do all the terrible stuff. Everybody else does NASA does the like, think about how great the universe is, think about how wonderful everything is, and this is my project that's exactly the opposite of that. Like, if you ever wondered, with one, basically one disease of plants could wipe out the modern economy in under a year.
Wait a minute. One disease of plants. So
yes.
You're saying that like a type of plant, or a plant that gets a disease? So the disease, what type?
So there's one type of plant that gets a specific disease. You have any guesses?
Corn.
Corn? Nope.
Oh.
Corn we can get around because we can do other grains, but all right, I'll give you one more. Try again.
Plant. Something that we can't. I don't know. Go ahead.
You want a hint?
Yeah.
Okay. So think of everyday like things that you do. So if you get up, you probably turn off your phone alarm. You go. People drive to work, or I guess they might again soon. And then during the day, you work at a computer. You come home. And you've interacted with the product of this plant multiple times throughout the day. Does that help?
So it's got to be a plant that creates plastic, right? No.
Close. Not plastic. It's rubber.
Okay. All right. So just a straight up rubber plant then.
Yeah. So rubber comes from trees. They're called rubber trees. Very.
That's kind of
convenient.
What it is, right?
Yeah. But the rubber trees that are grown in the world are monogenic. They're all genetically identical. They're all genetic identical twins of each other.
So no matter where in the world they are, they're the same.
Yeah, the ones that are used for commercial rubber.
Okay.
And that was as rubber became more necessary in the modern economy, that particular version was grown because it produces a lot of the raw material that you use to make rubber. And then in South America, there was what's called a rubber blight. This is a disease that infects these trees and just spreads like wildfire through the rubber tree forests. South America no longer produces rubber because there's no longer enough trees there.
Because of that?
So it's actually already happened once that this has taken out like an entire industry. And now the only trees are still monogenic and are all in like Southern and Southeast Asia. And so you actually can't get a straight flight from South America to Southeast Asia because of rubber blight. Like they don't, if that ever got to Southeast Asia, think about everything that you have that uses rubber right now. So your car tires is probably the first thing that you think of. If you think of even your like cell phone case often has rubber if you've got like an OtterBox or something like that. But then there's things that you just don't think about, like think of all electrical insulation that uses rubber in it. Think of all the medical devices that use the flexibility of rubber to like pump things or be there. And so right now, the plan, if that happens, is we don't have a plan. Like there's currently nothing in place. And there's people who make synthetic rubber, but it's nowhere near the scale that you can do with actual rubber trees, and it's much more expensive to produce.
So your Bridgestone tire is going to go up in price if they're making it out of artificial rubber.
Yeah, everything, what little rubber there would be available would like skyrocket, like more than how lumber prices have in the last like month and a half.
Yeah. So let me go back though real quick. When you said you can't get a direct flight, is that to control what people bring in, like produce and stuff, or they don't want planes flying over the rubber trees?
It's more of the first one, but it's just they want to make sure there's no chance that somebody brings it across, and that's going to put you through customs twice, so that if somebody, I don't know why they would have it, but had like a potted plant that has the blight on it and they brought it through customs, that'd be something that would be stopped.
Now, that could fall under like bioterrorism, right?
Yeah.
Whew. Man, I would have never thought about the rubber tree. Damn, dude.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So, all right. Is that so? When we talked on the phone, you said there was 8 that could happen right away. Is that one of them?
Yeah. So that's one that's like terrifying because it could happen by accident. It could happen on purpose, but it's very easy. Like on the likelihood scale, it's on like the very likely to happen at some point.
Whew. Never would have thought that, dude. That is crazy. That's why I do this show, dude, to find out shit like this. What's another one that like really stands out that's not so obvious?
I mean, do you want to go more into biology? Because I could talk about antibiotic resistance all day, or we could talk about artificial intelligence. Do you want to go into computers or more?
Let's do one. Let's do one of each.
Okay. Let's start with the artificial intelligence. Fantastic news. Skynet is not coming to kill us all.
Damn it. All right.
The bad news is that corporations with artificial intelligence are.
Now, how do you determine that? Like, obviously they're not, well, maybe not. You might surprise me here, but I'm thinking corporations not going to build a robot to run around and shoot everybody. So when you say quote unquote kill us all, there's going to be.
Yeah. So it's much subtler than that. It's not going to be like people or robots coming with guns, no Terminator, anything. This is just, it's going to invade every aspect of your life. So
it hasn't already?
I mean, it started already. But basically, think of when you go to like the grocery store, to a retailer of some kind. You go into the store, you pick whatever you're going to buy off the shelf. You see what the price is, and you go to the checkout. You check out. The future of automation is basically they want to predict, basically based off your profile, all of these data points that they have. So Google has something like 60,000 to 300,000 data points on a given individual to predict things, which is kind of terrifying in its own way, just that anybody knows that much about you. But imagine now in the future going in that store and every item has a digital display. There's a camera overhead that has facial recognition and then changes the price to whatever the AI has determined is the highest you'd be willing to pay for any given item, but it changes for each individual as you go throughout the store.
Get the fuck out of here.
What did I say that doesn't sound like something that a corporation would do?
No, I agree, but holy shit. So let me just put this in example. There's a can of said whatever, can X. And I come in because I'm a fucking cheapskate and they know this. So they're like, oh, he'll pay $4 for that. And then there's a guy that comes in behind me and his data points, hey, he buys all the high-end technology. He owns a really expensive car. He makes a lot of money, whatever data they have on it. And they make that, are you saying like $4.25 or like $7?
Whatever they can squeeze out of you.
Damn. I would see that happening. That's fucking scary.
And it's weirdly boring, right? Like we have all these ideas of like what different AI can do. And that's basically what a lot of it is doing on like Facebook, Amazon, and that is they're trying to put together enough data points that not only do they get you to buy something, but that they can predict who will buy what at what price, and then they sell that to whoever makes the product originally.
Oh, say I can get the consumer to pay 20% more, so I'm charging you 20% more.
Right.
Okay.
Or just like advertising right now, I'm sure you're aware, but like if you're not doing Facebook advertising, you're not really doing advertising if you've got a digital product of some kind.
Yeah. I got a buddy of mine that the analytics he doesn't spend hardly any time on Facebook, but his return there, it's like 5 to 1 on Facebook. Ridiculous. It's crazy. Wow. That's a little, and that's only grocery store. They could probably do that with anything, right? Gas. Yeah, but wouldn't that, if you and I are doing that and I grab it and you see that I paid $4 for, I see, and then you grab it and it's telling you $7, just using these examples, like, don't you go, what the fuck? Why is he paying $7? Why is he paying $4?
I mean, I would, but it doesn't take long for people to get used to something like that.
Well, last year proved that.
Yeah. And the trickier thing is they have a ton of data, so they could specifically make some things more and some things less for people, where the whole web will get you to spend more money, but on individual things that you care about, it'll look like you're saving money.
Yeah, sure. No, they've been doing that forever, like a loss leader in a grocery store, right?
Yeah, except this would be to specified to each individual, so it'd just be incredibly micro-targeted.
So when I was in a meeting at my job couple months ago, and we were talking about a restaurant called Wingstop.
Yeah.
And my they're big out in Colorado. Yeah, I know that actually, because I was out in Colorado Springs for a long time.
Yeah.
But there's some out here in New Jersey. They're starting to pop up, and we're just talking about it. There's 4 guys in my meeting, and 10 minutes later, my buddy holds up his phone, and then Facebook ads was an ad for Wingstop. So I was like, we know what's going on. I got a friend. She's like, you know how I shop now? I just yell and talk about what I want, and it pops up in my ad, and I buy it.
Jeez.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? But what now? How does that work? Now I'm thinking, how does that work if the little tag says $4 for me? How does that work when it gets to the register and they ring it up?
So you think there will be a register in the future? There won't be. You'll just walk out of the store and it'll auto charge you. Amazon already has a couple, at least one location where you do that. You just pick out your stuff in the store and then you walk out and it charges your Prime account.
All right, all right, all right. Yeah, see, look at me, old school, thinking there's going to be a cash register, right?
Yeah, I mean, this last year, all of a sudden, everybody can self-checkout, even though that apparently wasn't possible until 2020.
Right, right. Oh my God, dude, that's fucking crazy. And that's only scratching the surface with HI or AI, right?
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, the other half is the automation stuff. Is just uh, the wrong people are worried currently, or right now for right now. So right now, AI is being developed to get rid of HR staff, accounting, all of the like backroom white collar jobs that
mhm.
most big businesses have. They're all trying to automate those whole departments away.
And then when you
And I
say,
don't know about you, but I'm not super excited about having a robot.
whoop, say that one,
What was
say that.
that?
Okay, hold on 1 second. We got a
Oh,
little lag. Okay, say you're not super excited about what? A robot?
I'm not. I'm not super excited about a robot being in charge of human resources.
Yeah, right. Uh, but when you said, back up just for a second, when you said the wrong people are worried about it, so are you saying that blue collar people like myself are worried about it and they shouldn't be? The white collar people should be?
So it's a mix. There's some things that are very hard for a robot to do. Anything that requires problem solving that's novel. So anytime you run into weird shit,
That's my job.
that yeah, that job is basically safe because right now computers are nowhere near being able to do that. But if your job is in any way like repetitive, in a way that's pretty consistent, that's very highly likely to get automated. So it's not that it's blue collar versus white collar. It should be, does your job have a lot of repetition, or is it something that requires a lot of on the job problem solving?
Okay, and then maybe what about like I agree with you on that because the analytics of a robot being able to do that is so far in the future, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But they can obviously we all know that they can do repetitive things. Um, so like face to face, like somebody that's in business development and has to go out and talk to people and to get them to spend money with their organization. That one would probably be low on the list of AI, right?
Yep.
Okay. Whew. Scary stuff, right? I like it. I like it. I like talking about this shit. What give me another AI one though.
Yeah. AI. What else is there for AI? I mean, the other one is well, it's connected to AI, but it's militaries, rich militaries, so like the U.S., European militaries are trying to move towards automated drones for bombing.
They
And
about
so,
have that though, right?
yeah, that's almost like that may be actually already out in the field, and we just don't know yet at this point. But that one's kind of terrifying, just because if something goes wrong, like uh, what was it this fall, the solar winds hack, where we found out 5 different federal departments and a bunch of private companies, like in big ones like Microsoft, all got hacked at the same time and had been for a while. If they got into the DoD and got into the autonomous drone software, all it takes is click of a button, and all of a sudden,
No more government.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
that,
So what
and that,
about? Oh,
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Oh, I
no.
was going to say that one also dovetails into just drones generally are getting to be so cheap that uh, it's entirely possible that the next big like terrorist attack around the world or big event like that will be mediated by one or a small group of people with a huge number of drones. So you can get like a $10 drone at this point. It's
Right.
ridiculous. And then you just imagine you can strap an explosive, a firearm, anything to it, and then fly it wherever you want to fly it.
And then
if
just
you have, yeah,
and then just have an army of people operating. Know that there's going to be collateral damage, but they're only $10 a piece.
right,
Collateral damage might not be the right word, but knowing that they're going to, but they're just flying them and doing as much damage as they can as fast as they can.
right. You combine that with the autonomous technology, you essentially have a whole aircraft carrier's worth of drones that one person with the right autonomous program could be controlling. Yeah. And that one's like actively in development.
Yeah, that's not too far down the road.
Yeah.
We could see that. So you're saying instead of like another 9/11, it would be a drone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. What about I like AI stuff, but I really like the universe. Okay, so now let's talk about biological. Not that humans would do, but something that would happen biologically or something from space, right? I mean, the obvious ones are a comet, a solar flare, whatever. But starting with the space one, do you have one that's like fucking way out there that people don't think about that could happen?
I mean, not space specifically, but from like weird places. Like the article I'm going to be releasing this week is about how there's ancient bacteria and viruses frozen in the permafrost in the Arctic Circle, and that's thawing out. And scientists have actually been able to recover some of those bacteria and viruses, and they're still viable. Like they're not totally degraded. So that sort of, there could be something in there that we just have no idea even existed. So like a weird virus that we've just never encountered, wouldn't have any familiarity with a novel virus hitting the human population.
Yeah. So kind of like the classic movie War of the Worlds.
Yeah. In reverse. Yeah.
Right. But they weren't evolved to that virus. So if now there's a virus in the ice where you haven't evolved to handle it.
Yeah. And it's, so there's two different threats. The ones to humans are ones that we've never seen before, and the ones that are from victims of previous pandemic diseases. So there's people who had smallpox in Russia who were frozen into the permafrost to basically get rid of them, to bury them. And those corpses are thawing out, and most of the world is not vaccinated against smallpox.
Right.
And that, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna. What's the Black Plague or what?
Yeah, the bubonic plague.
Bubonic plague. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the same scenario, correct?
Yep. And there's people that were buried in the permafrost again, basically because it was a giant freezer that basically somebody goes away. But it's thawing out now, and it's remaining thawed. Regions are remaining thawed that used to freeze and unfreeze, and then new regions that have never unfrozen before in our recording of the area are starting to thaw out, and stuff is just kind of coming out.
So we could go back to the Goldilocks zone. The Goldilocks zone of the Earth itself is changing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So technically, we are moving we are inside the Goldilocks zone. But if you want to get really pedantic about it, by having more liquid water, we're technically moving into the more ideal Goldilocks zone. But that's just where liquid water is most likely to be. That's if you already have life evolved, that doesn't mean it's the best situation for them to be in.
Okay, so what I was trying to put the Goldilocks zone is on Earth itself, right? Where I read some stuff and obviously saw it on a documentary where the Middle East in like 50 years will be uninhabitable because it'll be so hot. So then, like Siberia will be kind of like where we are living now. You know, you and I are kind of in the same zone. That's what I'm kind of putting together, like a Goldilocks zone of the Earth itself, right? That's changing. So now that everything that was frozen up in Siberia, it's going to look like Colorado eventually because of global warming.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just I thought that was because what I was watching said the Middle East in 25 or 50 years will be like 150 degrees.
Yeah, and we're already seeing stuff like that in the middle of the Sahara, where there's becoming a totally uninhabited zone. So there's like no terrestrial life living there anymore because there's no water.
Woo. Anyway, and then the obvious ones are like if something hits the Earth, creates a bunch of dust, blocks out the sun, kills everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most people are familiar with that scenario. What's the possibilities of that happening?
So, do you want the optimistic or the pessimistic estimate? Because they're kind of all made up at this point.
Oh, really? It's whoever you ask. If somebody's got a different opinion?
Yeah, and it's part of it is like every time that like NASA does a map of the sky trying to find all of the like rogue asteroids and stuff, they always find new ones that they had no idea were there. And I mean, it's not a high likelihood. There's a weird effect of the fact that Jupiter is so massive compared to the rest of the planets that sort of stuff gets swept in towards it and away from us, which is probably one of the reasons we haven't had that many asteroids or meteorites. I forget which one's which, but
I never thought of that or never heard of that. So you're saying that Jupiter is so big and massive, and its gravitational pull is so big and massive, it tends, if something's shooting toward the Earth, Jupiter will kind of suck it away.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it looks like. If you NASA has some great like maps and stuff, and you can see like everything. Jupiter it's like the sun is the big thing that controls where things move, and then Jupiter is the next thing.
Damn, that's pretty cool. That is super cool. I like that kind of stuff, man. And what's your opinion on flat earthers?
I don't agree.
Like you're like, it's bullshit.
Yeah, there's just so much evidence that it's a spherical planet that it would take a massive conspiracy of like everybody, like not just like scientists and astronomers and stuff, but like everybody except the flat Earth community would have to be coordinating to fake the evidence that it's a sphere. Like,
and then my opinion on that is to what end? Like for what?
Yeah.
Right. But I had to ask you that. You being the NASA guy and all that, I'm like, I got to throw the flat Earth at him, see what he says. You were very polite about it. What do you think is the most likely thing to happen in a post-apocalyptic scenario? What do you think the most likely thing that in our lifetime or my son's lifetime would see?
I mean, the one that I spend the most time worried about is antibiotic resistance because it's already happening.
So can you explain?
So
Yeah.
that's where, yeah, so that's where basically all of the major diseases that we treat with antibiotics right now, so those are all bacteria. So like strep throat, getting an infection in a wound that's usually bacterial, all of those things, which right now we like don't think about. We're like, okay, I have this thing. Let's go to the doctor. They prescribe a 10-day course of antibiotics and it's gone. Uh, we're already seeing bacteria that's pan drug resistant. So pan means everything. So they're just resistant to all of the major classes of antibiotics that we use. And then our next line of defense is some crappy chemicals that don't work very well, and then nothing.
So you're saying that as we think of it, a simple cold or a simple infection that we take for granted that, well, you just get a shot, that's going to become resistant to everything. It's just going to.
Yeah, and it'll be basically how disease worked before the 1900s, before antibiotics became widespread, where sometimes you get a disease. You know how your doctor sometimes is like, oh, you have a viral infection. There's nothing we can do. Go home. That'll be every infection. So you said the colds are usually caused by viruses, which is one of the reasons you just get like NyQuil or Dayquil or whatever your brand of choice is.
Right.
And you just deal with the symptoms.
And let your body take care of it. But eventually
But if we have a new bacteria come out that's pan-drug resistant, we could have a bacterial pandemic, which we haven't dealt with since the bubonic plague. So plague is a bacteria.
Okay, so you're saying that, or in your opinion, it'd be more of a bacterial infection instead of a virus that causes us the most harm.
Yeah, and it's also bacteria can share genes with each other. So viruses can't really do that in the same way, but bacteria have a special bit of DNA separate from their main DNA. They're called plasmids. It's actually what you use if you're in molecular biology to do a bunch of work. But they can freely exchange them between each other, regardless of species, for the most part.
So my dog could give me something.
Yeah. So once one bacteria is completely pan-drug resistance, effectively we know that all bacteria will become drug resistant. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, and that was the first thing that popped up was one becomes drug resistant. You say the rest will. What kind of timeline would that be? Are we talking a year, 100 years?
So it somewhere in between those two, but where we're seeing it really pop up is actually in the hospitals. We're seeing MRSA, which is methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus.
Say that 4 times fast.
Seeing different, yeah. But so it's in the hospital where you think there's the most cleaning, but there's also the most antibiotic use is where we're starting to see these bugs developed. And so right now it seems to only happen in like critical care and immunocompromised patients or people who have invasive surgery or procedure. But probably within the next, I don't know, I don't want to say a date because if it happens next year, I'll feel real dumb. But if I would predict we have like a decade or so to come up with a plan.
Man, okay, so that's fucking terrifying, by the way.
You're welcome.
I like it though, man. I like your attitude, man, of everything's not sunshine and roses. Look at this is here. Really, there's nothing you can do about it, but it's kind of interesting to be aware of it. To me, anyway. You're like, God, you just go, holy shit, and then you move on about your day. Because I mean, what are you going to do about it? You're not going to sit in your basement and hoard 50 years of food. Well, you could. Never mind. We won't get into that. But yeah, I get that, and that's why I was interested in talking with you. You know, because this is shit that I wouldn't think about for post-apocalyptic. You know, I'm more of the mainstream or like the sun blowing up, you know, that kind of thing. So like the rubber tree and the bacteria thing, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of the reason I wanted to do this is because when I'm like head off in the clouds, which is probably more frequent than it should be, this is the kind of stuff I like thinking about. The other thing is that there are people working on each of the major problems. So there's a huge amount of money being invested from National Institute of Health, USDA, FDA on antibiotic resistance because it's like the most obvious threat in healthcare right now. So it's not like it's being unaddressed. It's just if we're going to win the race versus having an answer versus when inevitably we have an outbreak of a pan-drug resistant bacteria.
Now, and would you think that, you know, when you think about the Mayans and the Egyptians and ancient civilizations, do you think when, you know, people say they got wiped out, do you think that is that what they ran into as a bacterial infection?
So for Native Americans, it was mostly viral. So it was both smallpox and measles were not in the New World until European settlers came over, and it spread through the population like wildfire. So basically, they were going through an apocalyptic pandemic event before Europeans came to officially colonize. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have the first wave of explorers, which basically introduced the disease into various indigenous populations, and then it just spreads through both North America and South America. And then you can see weird effect. There's weird effects from this. So like, have you heard of the Little Ice Age?
No.
So in the 1800s, I can't remember the exact dates. There's a few years where reportedly temperatures were way below average across multiple years in a row. And basically what we think happened now with all the knowledge we have is basically Native Americans did do domesticated agriculture. It's a myth that they didn't just like let free plants roam and were all nomadic. There were a lot that did cultivated agriculture, and all of those fields and things got overgrown by the free plants that now could grow. When you lose 90% of your population, obviously there's going to be a lot less caretaking of that. But there was so much new plant growth that we think it effectively was a carbon sink. And so there was less carbon in the air. So there was less of a greenhouse effect. And so the earth literally got cooler for a few years there.
And are you looking at the first part of the 1800s or in the middle? Probably the first part, right?
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, medieval warm period.
That is, no, that's okay.
1860, yeah.
Wow, and the later
date.
So
yeah, well, you have to think it's like a lagging indicator. So it's like the originating event happens, then it takes time to take effect.
Right. So that's, man, who would have, unless you're like a guy like you or in that interest, I would have never thought. Obviously, I know that everything has a butterfly effect or whatever you want to call it, right? So if what I do today is going to affect what happens a year from now. But to put it in that context, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, do you think, say the Mayans, because just using a term that probably everybody knows about, that an explorer came into that civilization and did the same thing, brought a bacteria or a virus, and then they couldn't control it.
Yeah, I mean it's the most obvious explanation, and there's basically tales that from some of the recorded history at the time that there was huge mass graves and things. So I'm not sure about the Mayans specifically, but it's I actually worked on measles virus, which is why I'm familiar with that part.
Man, but that's so. It's probably more likely that that scenario happened to ancient civilizations instead of aliens coming down and wiping them out, right?
Yeah, we don't need to invent anything. It's a hard enough war already with what we have here.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. So, in your opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, you think that the bacteria part of that will be, would you call it bacterial?
Pan-drug resistant bacteria or antibiotic resistance.
And in your opinion, that's what the closest thing we got to worry about.
Yeah, it's kind of a toss-up between that and the water wars. So you're just talking about how the Goldilocks Zone is moving on the Earth itself, where deserts are becoming drier. The Middle East has less fresh water. That's the other one, and that's where a lot of conflict across the world is happening right now. Is all over freshwater access.
I could see that.
Yeah, and that's a direct effect of climate warming. Is just you evaporate more water, and then I hate the term global warming and climate change because, like, the most technically correct thing to say is precipitation redistribution, but that is not fancy or sexy to say as a
nobody wants to type that on social media. Precipitation.
Yeah.
No, nobody wants to say that. Climate change. Yeah. That's awesome.
And admittedly, climate change is better than global warming, but the important part is water is moving where it's distributed around the world. So some places that were close to having no water now have no water. Some places that had a moderate amount now have too much. And so it's causing a lot of conflict around the world. And there's not an easy way out because it's really hard to desalinate water to take the salt out of it. It's really, really energy intensive. So it's really expensive. So you have to either already be a rich country or not do it. Like, those are your two choices.
Now, like, we supposedly, I think it exists. There's like a ship that we have to as the United States can provide aid to another country that converts salt water to fresh water. Is that correct?
I mean, the technology exists, and it's just, if you're trying to do it at scale, so like if you were trying to desalinate water for the entire 300 and some odd million Americans, you probably couldn't produce it fast enough, and you would require a crap ton of energy.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It's just not it's not like running it through a filter and you can drink it.
No, and if you were able to come up with that filter, you would be like a multi-billionaire overnight. So
yeah,
if any of your listeners are real bored and want
to, or you get shot in the back of the head while at the grocery store or walking to the grocery store and somebody takes it from you. That's probably most likely going to happen. But I have a question that I ask a lot of people because, again, I like post-apocalyptic stuff. You're familiar with Ready Player One, right?
Yeah.
And how about Blade Runner?
Yep.
Movie? Okay. How about The Postman?
No, I don't know The Postman.
With Kevin Costner? No? All right. So that one it's a post-apocalyptic, and then basically everybody lives like 1600 because there's no technology. Everybody's just using candles. They live in hamlets. They make their own. Clothes and that kind of thing, right? You get the point?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the closest scenario is on a post-apocalyptic? If that happened, where do you think the world would be? More on the technology side, or more on the, like back in 1600 side?
I right now I would lean more towards the technology side, like very much Ready Player One. People off in a virtual world because they don't want to face actual reality.
Yep, I get that. And then if it's a bacterial thing like we were been talking about, I could see where technology is still there.
Yeah, and it would depend on the size of the impact. So if you have something like the Black Death, where it's like 30% of Europe's population was wiped out, that might go to like a weird Luddite, like low technology situation.
Mm-hmm. Why? Because you think that they just don't have the people to produce the technology and to run it?
Yeah, and like we're not good at thinking about massive disruptions. So if you're losing a third of people roughly across, just stratified across everything, that means you're losing huge parts of the labor force that are critical. So like people who run power stations, if a third of them disappear, all of a sudden everyone who's can do that job is going to get recruited to go and monitor nuclear stations, because if those go away too, then we're in even more trouble. So that will leave like localities, especially rural localities, people will move away from, or they'll adapt a more agrarian lifestyle, subsistence lifestyle there, as basically they're abandoned in favor of so you basically get a split. You'd have people who are going to wherever the hubs of technology where people are gathering, but you'd have a bunch of places essentially abandoned.
And then probably like little hamlets all over that people get together and live out in the mountains or out on the plains or something like that are self-sufficient or trying to make it that way.
Yeah.
That's a really good way of looking at it. Because, well, I never thought about the bacterial part of it. I always thought about war or a comet, or something hitting the earth. And that's really that a sun flare would destroy technology. Now that just shoves us back 200 years. Right?
Yeah, if you had a big enough sun flare to fry electronics, that would suck, especially right now, because the actual rare earth minerals that we use to produce most of our semiconductors and transistors and stuff, there's not that much on the earth to begin with. So if you messed up a whole bunch of it, all of a sudden we'd not be able to produce it. Definitely not at the scale we are right now.
Wow, I didn't even think of that. So a lot of the technology has a rare mineral in it?
Yeah. So they're a class of minerals called rare earth minerals, which are very inventively named because they're hard to find on the planet.
And then we've been consuming them at an alarming rate for how many years? So now all of a sudden, if those are all gone, that we're already looking at a depleted supply, and trying to get back to the amount of technology we have now would be tough.
Yeah, and they're not the mines, so they're actually like old-fashioned mined out of the ground, are not in convenient places. They're like so like there's a giant mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has had a lot of political strife and violence and things, and that's not exactly the ideal location to have a mine, but it's one of the biggest in the world. So if you're going to be one of these companies, you're reliant on places like that to produce the material for you.
Poof, poof. So, and then an EMP, right? I mean, is that because of last year and because of other ways, like you were talking drones and that type of thing? Do you think that an EMP strike is outdated?
I mean, the the main way that we know to discharge a large area EMP is with the nuclear bomb. So at that point, I don't think you're really worried about the EMP. Uh, as far as I know, there's no EMP discharge weapons.
That without being a nuclear. So, see, that's what I was wondering. And of course, it's all over movies and shit, right? But that's their movies. So, without a, to your knowledge, without a nuclear weapon, they can't produce an EMP.
Yeah. So the more likely source, if you want to go down the thought experiment, is the solar flare idea you had, because that could produce basically the same effect. It's a giant ball of nuclear plasma. So
same thing.
Yeah, that could do it. I think to some degree EMPs are overblown. Sorry to burst your bubble.
Damn, come on, dude.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I just thought it was outdated scenario.
Yeah, and it's EMPs basically just mess with electronics. They don't necessarily destroy them. So a lot of times it'll just essentially turn something off violently, and then you can turn it back on again.
Oh, okay. Okay. But like a sun flare is so powerful, it'll just destroy it.
Yeah. So there is a certain point at which you could theoretically reach enough energy to fry something.
Okay. So a terrorist attack of an EMP is highly unlikely. There's a lot easier ways to disrupt economics and society.
Yeah, right now, if you have a computer and access to the internet, you already have a much, much cheaper weapon.
Okay. Okay. And then obviously with a nuclear weapon, there's the ingredients are so specific. It's easy to figure out that when somebody's trying to build one.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now, do you think that going back to the multi-generational ship, the technology that we have now, do you think the best way to do that would be nuclear power?
Yeah. So the ideal situation is that we figure out how to do nuclear fusion, basically the same exact process in the sun, as opposed to what we use in our current nuclear reactors, which is nuclear fission, where you pull apart an atom. It creates a lot more byproduct than fusion does, and fusion is a little it's still dangerous, but it's dangerous in a different, more desirable way. I don't know how to say that.
There's a website for that. Dangerous in a desirable way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just explain, if people don't know, explain the nuclear power. It's I know this. It's tearing apart an atom.
Yeah. So basically, you take a radioactive element that's unstable. So these big, heavy atoms. We use enriched uranium. And then basically you shoot neutrons at it until the first one breaks, and then it's a self-sustaining reaction. So the atoms themselves are basically ripping apart into smaller particles, and you get a ton of energy released from that, and then that causes energy that hits the other unstable molecules, which also basically explode.
Right, right. Yep, keeping it simple. Now, the thing is, though, like in a nuclear power plant, like the rods that go in We know about the rods in the water and all that. Now, the rods are the reaction. Is that where the energy is coming from?
Yeah, so those are actually uranium rods, and so it's sustaining throughout that rod. And then the part about all power generation is that it's actually really simple. You're just trying to heat the water to turn a turbine. So you're basically boiling water efficiently is what you're doing.
And then where a nuclear accident happens is when they can't cool the rod and then they heat up and melt down and all that shit goes everywhere. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
So it's either you can't, well, one, you can't cool the rods, and two, if the reaction gets out of control. So it's self-sustaining. So if you aren't, don't have the proper controls in place, you can cause all of the rods to go at once, as opposed to whatever subset you want at the time.
Now, what's the difference between what the sun does and what a nuclear power plant does?
So what nuclear fusion is you have two hydrogen atoms. So this is one proton. It's the simplest atom you can have. And then you have another one of those hydrogen atoms, and then you push them together and make a helium atom. The energy created by those two being smushed together, that's nuclear fusion.
Okay. And that's what we do in a power plant.
That's what happens in the star.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My wife was messing with me and stuck my son's face out, and he's 2 months old, dude. So she was playing with me. So and I apologize. The sun pushes two atoms together.
Two hydrogen atoms. So it's basically just two protons that you stick together. And then that becomes a helium atom and releases energy when you do it. And the way the sun does this is it's so big and massive that it creates pressure that literally pushes them together. So just imagine you're pushing two things together, like two Legos. You know how to get that satisfying click, you have to put a little pressure on that? The same exact idea, except with like mind-bendingly large amounts of pressure and gravitational force that pushes them.
Now,
so those become helium. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, then the helium is the energy. So what we're seeing is when we look at the sun, we're seeing the helium. Is that right?
You're seeing the light. You're seeing the light created from the process. Yeah.
Okay. What makes that so difficult, in simple terms, if you can, for us to recreate that?
So I just said that thing about how you need this huge amount of pressure. Currently, the only way we know to get that large amount of pressure is to actually make a star. And for obvious reasons, making a star on the surface of the Earth is a bad idea. I hope that's obvious.
Yeah, I was going to say. There's probably somebody out there trying to figure out how to make money on it. But, okay. So
when we talk about fusion, when we're talking about fusion, man-made fusion is cold fusion. When people say cold fusion, basically they mean not making a star in order to make it happen.
Okay, so what's the difference between cold fusion and what the sun does?
The ideal is that they're the same, except with cold fusion, we could do it without needing all of the heat and all of the pressure that the sun uses, because we can't make that on Earth.
Okay. So you're saying that we don't have anything man-made that could produce and hold that kind of pressure?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have actually shot protons at each other, and we can do that on like a small scale, but we can't, in order to make power, you want to do that on a really large scale.
And the downfall of that, if we were able to create, like you said, if we were able to create something man-made or actually create a star, the downfall of that is pretty obvious if something was to happen.
Yeah. So if we ever get a version of Cold Fusion, it has to be one that doesn't have the same like catastrophic consequences.
Yeah. Holy Christ. All right, dude. Whew, man, this is good stuff. I could talk to you for about 5 hours, man, about this stuff. But tell people where we can find you, man. I'll put a link in the show notes for your website and stuff. But talk about your website a little more. I thought that was really fascinating. I enjoyed flipping through there, and
Yeah.
after I didn't get a downer feeling from the website. Like I didn't get like, oh, we're all gonna fucking die, and whoa. I didn't get that. I enjoyed reading it, the way you had it written, the way you have it laid out, and it, sitting here talking to you, you're not like one of these downer guys that we're all gonna fucking die in a billion years. And obviously, you're smart and you're talking about real things. So describe your website a little bit for people to go to and what they would expect when they jump on.
Yeah. So the website is anotherapocalypse.com. It's a scientifically accurate way to ruin your day. That's our little tagline. And if you look closely at the scientist on the top of the page, he's actually holding a round bottom beaker that has a burning earth that's turning to cinders inside of it.
Oh, I didn't look at it that close. I was gonna use your logo, so that's pretty good. What do they find on there? Like when they open it up, what were they going to find?
So the main thing you'll find is the articles where I go into depth on a bunch of these topics that we talked about today. So anything from rubber blight to artificial intelligence, just trying to bring up like one, why this thing matters, how it could potentially cause an apocalypse, and then what the potential solutions are, either if they're in process or if there's something that we should advocate for. And the idea behind it, while I am kind of a downer in real life, the real goal is to show people different problems that maybe they're not thinking about, and hopefully inspire someone to come up with some answers and to let people know that there's people working on these things.
Oh, cool. No, like the rubber tree thing. I would have never thought of that. It's just, I know there's a lot of stuff out there like that, but that's why, it's just interesting to talk to guys like you. Is there a way to support your project, or you got like a...
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways. There's an affiliate link. If you want to learn, about viruses, I've also taught a short course on Listenable. That's just an introduction to virology that was also inspired by this last year to just give people some general knowledge so you can tell what's bullshit in the news and what's real. I have a Patreon, and also I'm a Merch by Amazon partner. So if you like any of the scientist or my most viewed article somehow is the one that says everything is fine. I've got that on a t-shirt with the burning world under the exclamation point at the end. So any of those things, that all goes to help me just basically maintain the website. I have a real adult day job that's not this. This is sort of my side project.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I got an adult day job, and this is my side project as well. So, no, that's cool. What is that? The best way for people to get a hold of you is on the website. Just jump on there and
yep. And there's a contact me page if you want to contact me about something. This has been great talking to you, and I'm super open to talking with basically anyone. I can talk their ear off about this.
Yeah, no, like I said, I try to keep these, about 90 minutes, but I could sit here for the next 6 hours and go through all sorts of shit with you, but we can't do that. We can do, I'll have you back on for sure. So I appreciate it, dude. And just hang out for a second. We're going to talk after, but we'll keep on keeping on. All right.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Man, and you thought zombies were crazy. Holy Christ. How about trying to build a star on the planet? Wouldn't that be... Well, anyway, I know Alex has a ton of things floating around in that dome of his, and I'm just scratching the surface. So he will definitely be back on because I already have 1,000 more questions for him. But would love for you to support what Alex has going on, and you can find everything you need to know about him on his website, and the link is in the show notes. And also jump over on Instagram, give him a follow. Help build his community there as well. So I know you got shit to do. I'm going to get you out of here. But don't forget, liverishi.com. Use the code word TABLE. Great CBD product. And also my website, merch store, and buy me a cup of coffee, waltzkitchentable.com, because you know what? Shit ain't going to lift itself. Until next time, much love.